So, a Russian drone just landed in a NATO country, and no, it wasn't Romania right on the border of Ukraine. It was another NATO country, pretty far removed from the Ukrainian border. Now, was it a test? I don't know if it was accidental or intentional, but either way, it's a test, and I think NATO's about to fail. Now, NATO can hold up the illusion that they're tough as long as they are willing to do something or as long as their boundaries aren't tested and then they fail. But if what happens if they fail? What happens if they don't respond? If they do respond, World War III. If they don't respond, World War III, just in time. Okay, so here's what happened. A Russian Gerba drone crashed in Lithuania after flying into the country from Belarus. Now, Lithuania is nowhere near the border with Russia and Ukraine. It's just, well, I mean, it's got a border with Russia in Kaliningrad, but that's the enclave. That's different. Okay. As always, we're curious. Is this a violation of NATO's fifth article or still not? I mean, at what point do you get to that point? Okay. Russia decoy drone reached Lithuania through Belarus. It crashed near the Sumskas border checkpoint, approximately 1 kilometer from the Belarusian border. Preliminary reports suggested it was not a Shahid, but a Garand-type drone, and it does not pose a threat. However, Lithuania's National Security Committee is outraged that it managed to reach the country at all. I get it. Where's the border? I think I actually passed through this border. This is really close to the capital, which is in Vilnius. Okay, so here's Vilnius, and let's look at this. Here's Vilnius, and here is Sumkas, and that's on the way down to Minsk. I think that's the road I took going to Minsk back in 2005. So it's right on the border with Lithuania. And look where Russia is. Look where Ukraine is. And how did a drone wind up there? And if they don't respond, what message does that send to Putin and Lukashenko about how they won't respond? The West's failure to defend Ukraine has Russia and its coalition of T-states confident that they can acquire territory in the civilized world with no resistance. Today, members of Lithuania's government were sent underground as a Russian drone from Belarus crashed into a field, likely testing the response. And I think that it is a test, whether it's an intentional test or an accidental drone wandering off or just what. Lithuania activates NATO air policing protocol. Fighter jets were placed on alert. Top leaders, including the prime minister and speaker, were taken into shelters. Around 11:30, Lithuania's armed forces detected an object approaching from Belarus. NATO jets on training were put on task alert, but stood down after the object quickly fell. Soldiers secured the site. The object appears homemade and it poses no threat. So I don't know that this is a homemade device. I mean, it looks like a Garand, but again, here is the border. It was down here, and here's the border of Lithuania. How did it get from somewhere up here or down? Like how did that happen? And if they don't respond, okay, here's by the way, interestingly enough, here is Lithuania and Belarus. They used to be one country or part of one country with the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, in the 16-somethings. And here's the lands that belong to, this is just a little history lesson. It's free, by the way. The lands that belong to the Commonwealth are now largely distributed among several Central and Eastern European countries: Poland, Ukraine, Moldova, and Transnistria, Belarus, Russia, Lithuania, Latvia, and Estonia. So that's what this Commonwealth used to look like. By the way, when Russia starts talking about how they're just reclaiming former lands, there was also a Polish-Sweden union that took a big chunk out of Russia. Polish-Sweden Union was a short-lived personal union between the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth and the Kingdom of Sweden between 1592 and 1599. And look at the chunk that took out of Russia and Belarus and other countries. Okay, NATO will go to extraordinary lengths to do nothing about this Russian T-state. In particular, any NATO member that dares to invoke Article 4 or 5 of the North Atlantic Treaty to protect its national security will be severely punished by the Trump regime, says Michael McKay. I mean, again, that's commentary, but I don't think anything's going to come of this. And then Putin will know that they won't do anything and will be more emboldened. At least there should be some penalty. If it goes over the border, hey, X number of additional missiles or troops or something is going to support Ukraine for your violation. There needs to be some kind of consequence, or bad people do bad things. Okay, last night as I was going to sleep, this would have been the big story if I hadn't started with that. Last night as I was going to sleep, here the zoning in Kyiv, the Iranian kamikaze killer drones have gotten deadlier, more difficult to shoot down. Each can destroy an apartment building and kill its residents. And this was the map last night that I last looked at. And then I got up this morning and whoa, what happened? Okay, look at Kyiv. Kyiv was the center of all these drone attacks. But there's one going over here to Lithuania somehow, up that way, right? But otherwise, they're all targeting Kyiv. Russian ballistic missiles attack on Kyiv as the drone attacks continues. It's very loud in Kyiv, said Anton Gurashenko. And you see some damage. Things happen. 415 combined missiles and drones. 415. That would have been a high night. That would have been one of the half dozen of the highest hits night over night. Except like we're not even thinking this way, because now at 700, the bar is set much higher. 368 out of 397 drones were shot down. 8 out of 8 Iskander ballistic missiles. That's really amazing. 6 out of 6 cruise missiles, but 0 out of 4 S-300 ballistic missiles. They usually don't do well in knocking down ballistic missiles, but they got these Iskander ballistic missiles, and that's good. George Barrow talks about every few days Russia breaks a new record for the size of their strike packages. At this rate, Russians will be firing 1,000 drones in a single night before the end of this year. I mean, I said the other day it'll be within 2 months. I mean, I can't. Okay, July, August, and September. By September, we'll all other things being equal, unless something changes. This was 750 just the other night. The high water mark was 550 just a few weeks before that. It'll be to 1,000 within a few months. Okay, I hate to say that, but I think that that's the case, which is why air defense is so critical. Okay, Zelensky condemned Russia's latest 10-hour strike involving nearly 400 drones and 20 missiles, calling for urgent Western support. Last night I saw this before I went to sleep. Right now there are more districts of Kyiv being targeted by Russian missiles and drones than there are districts of Kyiv not being targeted. And here's the local monitoring channels just scrolling through it. Okay, tens of thousands of Kyiv residents are sheltering in metro stations at this hour. Russians pour ballistic missiles and drones into the city. This is every night with them. I mean, this is what's going on. 33 drones hit 8 locations. Debris fell in 23 more. So out of all those, the 415 aerial weapons, and only 33 drones actually got through and hit their targets. 23 more did some damage. Russian missile strike last night killed 22-year-old Kyiv police officer. Maria served in the police department in the Kyiv metro. Yep. There's a real human cost. Now, if that wouldn't have been the big story and the other wouldn't have been the big story, this would have been a big story. I saw this yesterday afternoon. 14-month-old Dmitro killed today in a Russian drone strike against his home in Kherson region. His great-grandmother was wounded. I can't show you the image of this. It's heart-wrenching. This is not the first time Russians deliberately target children with drones. A few days ago, they killed an 8-year-old boy in a civilian car in Kharkiv. Targeting children with drones, right? That's where the Russians are. The situation with Russians killing a toddler with the drones is especially despicable when you realize this wasn't a stray artillery shell that landed 50 meters off or a Shahed drone that hit a tall building, but an FPV drone guided in real time by an operator watching it live. Yeah, this is the Ruski mirror. This is what they want to bring to Ukraine. Okay, let's look at the battlefield. 920 Russians off the battlefield, 11 tanks, 3 armored fighting vehicles, 81 vehicles and fuel tanks. This 920, it feels low, but it's really like it's still high year over year. Let me tell you what I mean here. Russia's summer offensive in Ukraine is the bloodiest yet. Their summer offensive. If you look to summer over summer over summer, Satellite data shows heavy strikes in Kherson, major assault on Sumy, brutal battles around Pokrovsk and Konstantinivka. The Economist estimates suggest 31,000 Russian soldiers have been killed since May 1st. Okay, casualties and death. It just keeps going up, right? Okay, now if you just look year over year, 2022, 2023, 2024, and this is an older thing, so it doesn't include May and June here. But if you look at this, like the numbers just keep going up, and it made me think of like what analogy can I use? Well, if I go to the store and I try to buy a Snickers bar, it's going to cost $2, $2.50 something. Like if I get it in bulk, it might be less than that. But when I was a child, it cost 50 cents. And back in 1980, it cost 25 cents for a Snickers bar, right? I mean, that's the kind of thing that's happening here. It's like this inflationary effect. It's very weird. Somebody posted this. According to ChatGPT, this is 37,000 skull pyramid. That's what it looks like. So that would go from like mid-April to now. That's the death toll for the Russians. Yeah. Okay. But cross direction, 42 assaults. That's relatively low, but we got to keep our eyes on Pokrovsk. Okay, I want to revise something that I said before because I've not been a fan of the motorcycle assaults. I think it's stupid in an era of FPV drones trying to cut across the field on a motorcycle is ridiculous. But this actually turned my position a little bit. I still think it's stupid, but this is a good case our team analyzed in our study of Russian motorcycle tactics. One advantage shared by the Russians was the ability to conceal motorcycles inside buildings, allowing them to pop up near Ukrainian positions by rapidly advancing from cover. So if they can hide their motorcycle somewhere and get real close and then hide again and get real close and then hide and then finally attack and not have to cover a lot of ground, okay, I can see there could be some potential whatever, but just trying to cut across a field seems stupid. The idea is simple. If you can successfully hide motorcycles in a building not far from starting point of the advance, you can launch a surprise attack. By the time it's detected by UAVs, there may be no time to respond with FPV or artillery. So I'm revising it. I still think it's stupid to try to create some kind of big offensive, but if you can get really, 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 really close in order to have surprise, maybe there's some value. I still wouldn't want to do it. Okay. The coordinated triple drone strike hit FSB-linked facilities in Luhansk on July 8. 7 Kirillo-type drones targeted buildings in a number of these cities within a 10-minute window. All 3 structures were destroyed. 2 FSB staff were injured in Belovodsk. 2 more are still unaccounted for. Novgorod, a city of 250,000, lost electricity following it was a lightning strike. I'll take it. Strikes by Ukrainian FPV drones with auto-targeting on Russian Buk, Strela air defense systems and other targets. I mean, these are good hits. And again, drones are everything here. New AI-powered strike. UAV developed by Ukraine successfully targets Russian assets in the Donetsk region. The drone destroyed 2 Buk air defense systems, 1 Strela system, and a buggy. Like, these are AI-powered. They know what they're looking for, and they just keep going. All right, Ukrainian Hammer Air Force MiG-29 carried out precision strike using 2 AASM Hammer-guided bombs on Russian troop concentration in the Sumy region. And probably the clearest footage of Ukrainian Air Force MiG-29 Fulcrum launching a salvo of GBU-39 SDB glide bombs. That's what it looks like when they're releasing their package. And okay. Now, I've showed you some Russian vehicles that were covered, like porcupines trying to avoid drones being able to strike it. This is a U.S.-supplied M1126 Stryker in service with Ukraine's 81st Air Mobile Brigade, supporting extensive anti-FPV drone armor. So, yeah, it's all the way around. They're trying to keep the Russians from doing to them what they're doing to the Russians. Now, this is a sad story, but I'm showing it because, 1, it's very unusual, and 2, it can happen to Ukrainians as well. An officer of the Ukrainian SSU, that's the Security Service of Ukraine, was assassinated in Kyiv with 5 shots from a pistol this morning. The person who was killed is likely Colonel Ivan Voronich, as identified by the former Ukrainian intelligence officer. Okay, so yeah, it can happen to Ukrainians as well. It's less likely, or it seems like it happens less in Ukraine than it does in parts of Russia, but it can happen. She's ours now. This is an interesting article about Beyonce. Okay, why am I talking about Beyonce? You'll see. Z Patriots claim that Beyonce supports the Russian world, all because of her outfit. Beyonce performed in a costume colored like the U.S. flag, which remember is red, white, and blue. But Russian patriots weren't fooled. They saw a Russian trace, no less. While social media spent the whole day discussing the singer's outfit, the newspaper took a step further and published a full-fledged investigation. Their journalist even sent a formal request to Beyonce's team, asking her to comment on the choice of the stage image. As expected, no reply followed. I mean, she's wearing red, white, and blue. She's an American. I mean, if she was French, I wouldn't think anything of it either because the French tricolor, right? So... okay. Nowadays, when an international court says Russia is guilty of shooting down a civilian airliner, it's legit to ask, which one did they mean? So this is a response of Darth Putin to the findings, landmark ruling finds that Russia shot down MH17 with 298 people on board years ago. Okay. And then finally, I'll leave you with some happier news because this has been like, this has been a hard one to put together. In India, puppy saved 67 people, barking just minutes before a deadly landslide hit their village. The dog began to bark loudly, waking up its owner, who then noticed a crack in the wall with water seeping through. The man grabbed the dog, ran to alert the rest of the village. Just minutes after all 67 residents had taken shelter in a local temple, a massive landslide struck and buried the village. The little dog is now hailed as a hero. So I'll leave you with some uplifting news on that note. Thank you for your time, my friends. Thank you for the likes, the shares, and the subscribes. And thank you for being the kind of person that cares about Ukraine.